All right, so a few years ago, I was working on this project on Kauai that was a genealogy project. It's called Kauai Nui Kuapapa. And that project was all about telling the history of Hawaii's place names during the Kamuali'i time period, right? So Kauai's era before Kamehameha. And one of the requirements was involving our work with the county of Kauai. And we were presenting to a bunch of staff members that represented different divisions of the county on Kauai. And I remember all of the individuals I was working with got up and made an introduction by saying, I'm so-and-so from this Mokupuni. And my family, my father's side is originally from Sicily. So I got up and I said, hey, I'm Dave, and I come from the Mokupuni of Sicily. And there was a funny little chuckle around the room. And I went on and explained what my role in the project was and what it was that I was doing there. And when I was done, I stood to the side, and one of the other guys was like, looking at me. He made this comment. He said, hey, Dave, you're kind of like one of the unlikeliest locals. And I thought to myself, unlikeliest local, that's an interesting way to refer to me or frame that. And so as I started thinking about that, and in preparation for talking about my story here for the Storytellers event, it really got me thinking about how it was that I came to be a part of creating content and generating content that is very rooted in Hawaiian culture, a Hawaiian sense of place from the past and up to today, and what that represents and what that means to be a part of Hawaii or living in Hawaii today. And in that journey for me, ironically, is about as intertwined in my professional and personal life as it can be. I came to Hawaii 15 years ago with my then girlfriend, who's now my wife. In that time period too, I started working with my father-in-law, who had this publishing company, Bess Press, that was going through some transitions. He asked me if I could help out. I was teaching a creative writing course and had a background in independent filmmaking. Documentary films to be exact. And so I said, yeah, sure, I'll come help out with some of the things that you got going on. And lo and behold, 15 years later, here we are. And it's become a really sort of very, very personal objective of mine to continue the work that was started by my father-in-law 41 years ago. And it's kind of helped define who it is that I am in this role as like the unlikeliest local, working with other people's voices and other people's content to bring it about to a wider audience, right? And in this case, particularly through books and then other media development projects, whether it's films or whether it's helping go into other businesses or work with other organizations to help creatively tell their story. And it's truly been an interesting and wonderful and inspiring experience and journey. And one of the things that my staff and I have talked about a lot over the course of this last 18 months with this health pandemic has been what it is that we can do better. And not necessarily what it is that we can do better as individuals, but what can we do better collectively as a group and as a community? And how does that tie into the work that we do? And through all the years, as I've sort of taken on and worn these different hats of, just answering the phone, initially at the publishing company, taking people's orders or just answering general questions, to packing books in a box, to going out and visiting schools and talking story with educators and kapuna and scholars and cultural practitioners and historians, is that I've learned how integral the human to human relationship is with not only our local community, but a national community and a global community. And those conversations and what's come out of those conversations has not only provided the roadmap for how we operate as a business and how much it's influenced what it is that we produce and what we publish, but it really has been an enriching life experience that has allowed us to grow personally and individually, particularly for myself and in my case. And when I started working in publishing and I started working in the book industry, I didn't have kids, and I have kids now. I have a 6-year-old and a 3-year-old, and working in this industry has helped me become a better person in terms of being a parent and figuring out how to try and connect with my kids through this idea of storytelling, like literal storytelling. I mean, that's like the business that I'm in, and seeing how profoundly their evolution into becoming readers or becoming, little people with their own individual personalities, how significant that is, and how much, again, that underscores this idea of our human to human connection as a community. And for us, business-wise, I know that my personal journey over the course of the last 15 years has undoubtedly been influenced by those interactions with folks from outside of my workplace. But it's also come along with that real sense of respect and responsibility to carry someone else's story or voice forward in a book or in a multimedia project, and really try to treat it with the respect of and the individual uniqueness that it lends to what it's sharing and what it's bringing about. And so my personal journey has really evolved from being this guy that was working with his father-in-law and not really necessarily having an outlet to gripe or complain to, because you can't go home and complain to your wife about maybe disagreements that you're having with your father-in-law at work. But also just this idea of maturing, right? And going through positive and negative experiences with people and figuring out, what I can take away from that and what I can learn from that. And I still make mistakes. Obviously, that never ends. But I think the biggest part of what my personal journey in coming to Hawaii and being immediately thrown into an industry and a business that is directly working with people who are perpetuating and cultivating a modern sense of identity and place of what it means to be from Hawaii, what it means to be a Hawaiian in some cases, which obviously I'm not, but working with them and having the respect and the care given to me to help tell those stories or share those stories with audiences of all ages. And whether that means us producing a textbook for 9, 10, and 11-year-olds, or just producing a biography or a memoir of someone who is recognizable within the Hawaiian community at large or within our local community, has been a really, truly sort of inspiring experience. And I've taken those conversations and those influences and helped sort of rework my internal self and internal being to try and become a person that I'm always trying and striving to be. And I try to reflect that in my interpersonal relationships with my staff members and with the collaborative partnerships we have in our business and our workplace, as well as in my home as a parent, as a spouse, as a child, as a son, and a brother, and so on and so forth. And so for me, I don't think that there's any separation. And I think a lot of small business owners are really in the same boat. There's no separation when you own your own business and run your own business between home and work, right? You're always sort of thinking about what's going on at work or what can be done or how can I improve my workplace or my organization. And I think that the biggest takeaway from me on my personal journey is that it's still ongoing, right? It's still a lifelong learning process that's not going to change. And I feel lucky enough to be in a place like Hawaii where there's so much to take away from the work that I do and how I can incorporate that into my own self, and try to be better, try to be a better person.